Well, good morning, YouTube. All right, guys, we're here at the Mid-America Truck Show 2024, and I've walked by this booth a number of times, and their product just stood out to me. One, I love the color that they've painted these. The company's called Cush, and they've got a really cool setup here, and I'm going to let Dane tell you all about it.
Hi, I'm Dane Meyer. I'm the Senior Director of Operations at Cush Suspensions, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about what we do and why it's cool. So this guy right here is actually incredibly new and incredibly unique. We call it the Pendulaire. Some of you guys may know in the trucking industry of Faymanville. Anyone in Europe will know that a hydraulic suspension is made with the really cool features on it, but it's with hydraulics. So any type of air in the system, really high maintenance costs, quite expensive system, but a very cool functionality. What we're doing here is we are trying to replicate the exact same functionality, but with air ride. Now why that's cool is air ride's considerably cheaper. It's easier to maintain, and it's a lot more readily available on parts and service. So we're the first of our kind to do it. Nobody else has this in the United States, and this is the very first prototype of the suspension. We call it the Pendulaire. Cool, and then I want to show you this guy over here. So this guy, we'll call it the CXS. This is a steerable suspension. It is a 13,500 pound rated, liftable, steerable axle. Now, what's cool about this one, this would usually go on like a dump truck. And on the dump truck, what you would usually see here is a shock absorber, just like you would have in a car. Now, if anyone knows anything about shocks or cars in general, shocks have have gas in there. It's usually nitrogen. So with that, they leak, they fail, and when that happens, on this, you get a bunch of shimmy, and then your wheels start to shimmy. Anyone who drives truck and that happens, it's a total pain. So what we've been able to do, and what we're trying to do, is replace that shock absorber with an airbag. So you might be thinking, well, how does it dampen? How's it gonna work? All good questions, some of which are kind of complicated, but the basics are, you take the shock out, you put an airbag in, you apply air pressure to it, and as a result, what you have is, so long as the bag doesn't get damaged, the same functionality as the shock absorber, but it has the lifespan of an airbag, which is essentially, as long as this rubber is good, 10 years or so, much easier to use, lighter weight, and also, we believe, to be better functionality. You also have trailing arms that are crisscross. So I'm a sales guy, I'm not an engineer, so my lingo's a little simple probably, but with the crossed arms, it allows you to have much stiffer structure, which is very important on a steerable suspension. Thirdly, you have adjustable slotted hangers. So when you're actually building it onto your frame, if you have a frame width of 34 inches, 32, whatever it is, usually it takes a different suspension per width. In this circumstance, we've made one suspension that I can apply to all those. You have slots right up here that allows this part to move however much you need it to, so that you don't have to wait 3 extra weeks to get the same suspension with a different width to it. The idea is we're trying to accomplish easy, simple products for you to be able to use, and you don't have to wait a long time for it. Okay, so now I want to show you something else. So this guy right here is part of our Ride Best series. This is an underslung suspension, very, very common out into the world. We have it just as long with our competitors, Ridewell and Hendrickson. They make a very quality product, just as like as this, but here's the difference. We have a couple key components with the idea of service in mind. Oftentimes, if you have a suspension from Ridewell and you need to service it, you need to buy Ridewell parts. Their bushings are very unique. They have an idea as to why that's okay. But what usually happens is a driver's on the side of the road, for whatever reason their bushing fails, which rubber, it happens, and you need to replace it. Well, in that circumstance, we're crossing our fingers that you have a Ridewell distributor nearby that has the right bushing for you. Hendrickson has something similar, except Hendrickson has a large part of the market share. Anywhere you go in the United States, the continental North America, you will find a distributor that has Hendrickson parts. What we've been able to do is build a suspension that acts and functions just like our competitors. It's all the same product. However, we make it so that you have industry standard parts. So if you're in Alberta, Canada, and you have a Cush suspensions, and you need a new bushing because rubber happens, you need to replace it, you don't have to go to Cush Suspensions to buy the parts themselves. You can go to any local Hendrickson dealer or distributor of parts and be able to use a Hendrickson service kit and their bushing and their bolts, and you can pop them in and they will work just fine. You can source locally. The same thing when it goes to shocks and airbags. All the parts that usually tend to fail on a suspension or get used and need to be replaced can all be replaced with industry standard parts, and you do not have to be beholden to a Cush Suspensions parts distributor to be able to do that. We want to make sure that you are on the road as much as possible, limit that downtime as much as possible, get you making more money. So what we'll also take is over here. So this one's really cool. This is what we would just call a single axle slider. There's other companies that have something like this, but ours is a little bit unique. With this single axle slider, the way that it works is these pins will actually be actuated by air. They push in. This is usually resting on the trailer frame, essentially. And then you're allowed to actually move this entire mechanism forward and backwards by a tremendous amount. What that does is it changes the load on the trailer, and it allows you to, well, simply, it allows you to do more things with the suspension. So it's similar makeup, it's just a regular suspension, but with a sliding box. Now, Cush Suspensions is the very first one that was able to make a tandem, independent slide suspension. So essentially having two of these on one trailer. Usually this is paired up with a fixed suspension, you cannot move it, and then you get a combo with this. So the rear axle usually is the one that moves in backwards and forwards. That works for a lot of people and it's used everywhere. However, if you have the ability to move the front and the rear, or just the front and have a rear fixed, you have a lot more functionality. And the ability to make that happen on a trailer is more complicated. It takes a trailer manufacturer that's open to a little bit of innovation, but we are constantly searching for people who are open to a little innovation, and we found partners that were able to do that. This is a very cool suspension setup. We've also had the ability to make custom slide boxes. So with our competitors, this isn't necessarily unique, but there's a lot of trailer frames that are unique, which requires a unique slide box. So wider frames on the I-beams, thicker frames on the I-beams require a better, more unique setup with the slide box itself. We're able to custom make anything that somebody might need. Aluminum trailer frames, steel, both are doable. You'll notice right there, we have one of these that has actually been galvanized. We do that for a lot of partners as it stands. That one's also disc brake. We do lots of disc brake applications. This one comes in and we utilize it a lot with our partners currently. I think that's it, right?
So your system, is this something that's going to be put into production on trucks, or is this a retrofit? Somebody already has a truck and they want to upgrade their suspension. Good
question. So we partner with primarily OEM trailer manufacturers. Some that would come to mind is Kalen Seibert trailers, Eager Beaver trailers in Lake Wales, Florida, Globe trailers, primarily heavy haul, lowboy, oil field applications, flatbeds, step decks, things like that. We work with the trailer manufacturers. That being said, sometimes we work with direct users, you know, whatever gets the guys on the road. That's our primary concern.
That's awesome. So you've got a remarkable line of products for trailers. If somebody wanted to upgrade their suspension on their tractor, their actual drive unit, what do you have to offer for that?
We get that question quite a bit, actually. We have some product in that regard. It's usually truck lift axles. So specifically, this one would go on a dump truck, but we also have lift axles that are 20,000 to 25,000 pound rated, and they have what you would call a bent tube axle. So instead of a straight axle, like something like this, it actually dips down and it works itself around the drive line. Very common. A lot of people have it, but we make that specifically for them. Outside of that, we leave the other suspensions to the other manufacturers.
Awesome. Sounds good. Dane, I want to thank you for taking the time to explain your product to us today. And you've got a really cool product, and I hope everything goes well for you.
Thank you.